Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show, joined by our good friend Bill Humbert, recruiter guy and author of Recruiter Guy's Guide to Finding a Job. Nice to have you back here. We were just talking about Thanksgiving, so you enjoyed the holiday?
We had a great holiday. Good. How about yours?
It was wonderful.
Great.
I tell this to everyone that asks me, we didn't have to travel, so it was even better than it usually is.
Awesome.
Yeah, our drive to dinner was about 6 minutes, so I'm a fan.
That's the best.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Well, this morning we're discussing a very important topic involving effectively dealing with difficult people. And in an ideal world, everyone would just get along, right? But we are human. This is not always the case. Tell me why this subject matter is so specific to especially a resort community where we serve so many different people.
Well, in a resort community, so many of us in some way or another are customer facing. And as a result of that, we're going to be meeting the people who may be unhappy for some reason or another. And many times it's really not the person that's in front of them that's created the problem. It could be somebody else within the company, or it could even be a situation that occurred that just impacted their experience.
Right. So let's define what difficult people are.
It starts out as a person who is unhappy. Okay? Sometimes it's an easy fix and it never reaches difficult, but it's always good to treat that person right from the beginning to try to make them happy. Sometimes it's something that's occurred outside of their experience in whether it's a resort or store or whatever. For instance, last year I know this executive that flew here from another country with his family for ski vacation. They were here 2 days. He gets a phone call from his president telling him to get on a charter flight immediately to be back in the other country the next day for a meeting.
Gosh.
And can you imagine going down to where the charter flights leave down in Heber at the FBO and have something go wrong at the last minute? Well, that person sitting in that chair there had nothing to do with any of this, but they're going to feel the wrath of this person because they're frustrated with their entire situation.
And along with that, there's this factor of nonverbal communication, which plays a much larger role than we might suspect.
Exactly, Chelsea. People are reading us all the time. They may not know they are, but they are. So what I suggest to a worker or to an owner of a business, if you're sitting down, that person's standing up, it's a good idea to say, sir, to show you some respect, or ma'am, to show you some respect, I'm going to stand up so I can chat with you. Well, what you're trying to do is get eye to eye with that person. Obviously, if I'm talking to Mark Eaton,
that's kind of difficult.
That's right, I climb a ladder.
Sure.
But for the most part, we're pretty close. And then be careful with your gestures. If you're standing there like that, that's very closed language.
Is this too closed?
No, you're fine.
Probably.
That's just relaxed.
No, this is
That's
relaxed.
relaxed. This is closed.
How about this?
That's way too relaxed.
Well, that means I'm way too, yeah. Well, that's the other side of the spectrum. You don't want to seem like you're being too informal because that could come off as disrespectful, too.
Exactly. What I've seen a couple of times is the person on the other side of the counter or the person I'm talking to rolls their eyes. Well,
that inadvertent eye roll?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, the fangs are going to drop.
Yeah.
And even me, I'm kind of a nice guy. And when I see that, talk about disrespect.
Sure.
So make sure you're looking at the person in a friendly way. Smile as they're approaching. And then, develop that serious look when they're discussing the problem.
And then up next, the criticisms. Are we taking these personally when they actually happen? What do we need to know about that?
Chelsea, many times people are very proud of where they work. It doesn't matter if it's one of the resorts here or, it could be a two-person business on Main Street. And sometimes they view this dissatisfaction by this customer or this guest as a personal affront. And it's really a business transaction. So get the personal stuff out, other than having some empathy for that person, but don't feel like they're personally attacking you. They're upset with the value they're receiving in the business.
And then next step, we have this motto, I think that's everywhere, of the idea that the customer is always right. Is that true? What do we need to take away from that?
You know, it's not true.
Okay.
The customer is not always right. But what's really important to remember is that the customer is always the customer or guest. And that way you treat them properly.
And then along with that, how can we go about helping an unhappy customer? Because like you mentioned, with being in a resort community, you know, people, you know, you're either dealing with family or schedules or a tour that maybe didn't work out, or you woke up late because you're on vacation, what have you. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, potentially.
It's important to have a process in place before you see that person. And so if you're the owner or manager, it's important to talk with your employees about what the process is. And a good way of starting the process is listen to the guest or the customer and ask them, so what's the problem? And then restate the problem back to them to make sure you understand. If they agree that that's the problem, now you have a common base that you can work from.
So make sure you're even arguing about the same thing.
That's right.
I guess, or rather
or
talking,
you're discussing, not
Right.
arguing. You're not reaching that point, and hopefully never reaching that point.
Sure.
And then you ask them, what would make you happy? How would you be satisfied? What's the result we're trying to reach?
Very good.
And then, you know, if it's totally, you know, I want $1 million from you guys. Well, you know, obviously we
Like,
can't
well,
do
I can
that.
only go so far with
Yeah,
your
right.
request.
Exactly.
I'll see about that. But.
That's right. And then it's really important to work step by step to solve the problem. And in an interview, it's really difficult unless there's a specific situation laid out. But it's hard to say what the steps are. But develop the steps, and then know when that employee has to hand off to a manager. And the way to do that is, you know, sir, ma'am. It's usually more sirs than ma'ams, but you know, this is beyond my capability of making you happy, and our goal here is to make you happy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call my manager, or I'm going to call the owner and ask them to make that decision. And that really disarms the other person, because now, you know, you're doing the best you can to help them, so they have to like that, and you're showing respect to them by bringing in somebody who may be able to better handle their question or their concern. And then as the employee, you pass it off to them, and that person will then say, you know, let's restate your problem. What's the issue that we're dealing with? What would make you happy? And then discuss some sort of way to get in that middle that both sides are comfortable.
Right. And then last of all, knowing our limits. What do you mean by this?
Well, you know, I laughed about a couple minutes ago about the $1 million. Obviously, you can't give them $1 million. So know what it is.
Depends on who you ask.
Exactly.
I'm just kidding. We'll move on. We'll move on
Exactly.
from that.
But know what it is that you can give them. What's the maximum I can do? And then try to work within that to get to where they're going to be happy. That's really the goal. You know, we want them to be happy because we want them to return.
Right. Very good. Well, wow. A lot of, you would think, common sense things, but even as you've discussed these, I'm like, that's a great way to word that I never thought of before. So a good refresher if you've heard that before, or of course some wonderful reminders. And if we want to get in touch with you personally and get your help about maybe our specific business-related issues, how do we go about doing that?
We go about it, there's going to be 2 ways coming up very soon.
Oh, yes, this is true. I want you to remind folks of that.
RecruiterGuy.com is my current business. I just started a brand new business in September. We're ramping up for that. It's a public speaking business and business consulting business. And from that, I'll also be writing more books.
Excellent.
And the next website that's coming up, not done yet, speakbill.com. and that's for my public speaking business.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations moving forward with that. That is so exciting and makes perfect sense with what you do so well at and being able to offer your services to more people through advancing that business. So that is so wonderful, Bill.
Thanks, Chelsea. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We look forward to having more interviews with you. Of course, Bill comes on monthly. This is the first time you've seen him here. You can also catch him online. And of course, his book, where can we get this from?
Locally, Dolly's has it, and then on Amazon.
Very good. Bill, nice to have you here once
Chelsea.
again. Next time we see you, we'll be talking more about Christmas, how Christmas was, right?
That's right.
This is crazy.
And New Year's.
I know, and then Sundance. This is bizarre. All right, well, Thank you so much. Nice to have you here. After this break, we'll be right back. We're talking about our Real Estate Essentials segment, discussing painting, that and more. Don't go away.